The shotgun blast that shattered the morning quiet sent Maeve Fletcher diving behind the water trough, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. And when she peered around the weathered wood, she saw him for the first time, tall and steady as an oak tree, walking straight toward the trouble like he had all the time in the world. Florissant, Colorado had never been what anyone would call peaceful, but the spring of 1878 had brought more chaos than usual. The mining operations in the surrounding hills meant a constant flow of rough men with rougher manners, and the town had grown faster than its ability to maintain order. Maeve had learned to keep her head down, do her work at the general store, and get home before dark. She was 23 years old and had been fending for herself since her father died 2 years prior, leaving her nothing but debts and the small cabin on the edge of town. The man causing the ruckus was drunk, waving his shotgun at anyone who moved, shouting about someone cheating him at cards. Maeve pressed herself flatter against the trough, her flour-dusted apron soaking up mud. She had only stepped outside to sweep the boardwalk. Now she was trapped. The tall stranger kept walking. He wore a tan duster that hung open despite the cool mountain air, revealing a working man's clothes beneath, worn but clean. His hat was pulled low, but she could see the strong line of his jaw, dark with stubble. When he spoke, his voice carried clear and calm across the street. "Put it down." 2 words. That was all. The drunk swung the gun toward him, and Maeve's breath caught. But the stranger did not flinch. He stood there, hands loose at his sides, and repeated himself. "Put it down. You have not hurt anyone yet. Keep it that way. Who the hell are you? Someone who would rather not see you hang for murder over a card game." The stranger took another step. "That shotgun is shaking in your hands. You are scared and angry. I understand. But this is not the way." Something in his tone, that steady assurance, seemed to penetrate the drunk man's rage. The gun lowered an inch, then another. The stranger closed the distance, moving faster now, and plucked the weapon from slack hands before the drunk seemed to realize what was happening. Within seconds, the town's part-time sheriff was jogging over to haul the man away, and the street began to return to normal. Maeve stood on trembling legs, brushing mud from her skirt. Her hands were shaking. She had seen men killed over less in this town. She had seen blood on these streets. The stranger was breaking open the shotgun, removing the shells with practiced efficiency. Then he turned, and his eyes found hers across the distance. They were blue, so blue they reminded her of the sky over the mountains on the clearest winter days. He walked toward her, and she realized she was staring. "Are you hurt, miss?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Up close he was even taller than she had thought, with broad shoulders and the kind of weathered face that came from years of outdoor work. He could not be more than 25 or 26, she guessed. "You are muddy." There was the faintest hint of amusement in his eyes, though his expression remained serious. "I apologize for the trouble." "You apologize? You just saved half the street." The words came out sharper than she intended, adrenaline still singing in her blood. "Who are you?" "Kade Garrison. I am new to town. Just arrived this morning, as a matter of fact." He touched the brim of his hat. "Not the welcome I expected, but I have seen worse." "Maeve Fletcher." She found herself offering her hand before she thought better of it. A proper lady would not shake hands with a strange man in the street. But Maeve had stopped worrying about being proper around the time her father drank away their last dollar and left her to face his creditors alone. His hand was warm and calloused, his grip gentle despite the obvious strength there. He held her hand a moment longer than necessary, then released it and stepped back. "You work at the store?" She glanced down at her apron, still dusted with flour from measuring out supplies. "I do. Mr. Henderson owns it. I keep the books and mind the counter." "Then I will likely see you again soon. I am told it is the only place to get decent supplies within 20 miles. That would be correct. She should go back inside. She should stop talking to this stranger. But something made her linger. "What brings you to Florissant, Mr. Garrison?" "Work. I am starting as foreman at the Cripple Creek Ranch, about 8 miles north. I came to town to arrange for regular supply deliveries and to find a reliable farrier." He glanced toward the store. "And perhaps to buy a few things I need to settle in." "I can help with that. Come inside when you're ready." She turned and walked back to the store, acutely aware of his gaze on her back. Her heart was still racing, but she was no longer sure if it was from the danger or from those impossibly blue eyes. Inside, Mr. Henderson was peering through the window. That was something, was it not? Thought we would have blood on the street for certain. We would have, if not for Mr. Garrison. Who? The man who stopped it. He is new in town, foreman at Cripple Creek Ranch. Henderson grunted. About time old Patterson hired someone competent. Place has been falling apart since his last foreman ran off with that saloon girl. He squinted out the window again. Big fellow? Looks like he can handle himself. Maeve busied herself straightening the counter, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. She had no business feeling anything. Men came and went in this town like tumbleweeds. Most of them were trouble, and the ones who were not were usually married or looking for something she could not provide. She had learned that lesson the hard way. 3 years ago, she had thought herself in love with a miner named Thomas. He had been sweet-talking and handsome, full of promises. He had courted her for all of 2 weeks before trying to get her into bed, and when she refused, he had moved on to easier prey without a backward glance. Then there had been the merchant who had offered marriage, only for Maeve to discover he already had a wife in Denver. After that, she had stopped paying attention to men's pretty words. The door opened, and Kade Garrison walked in, removing his hat. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar. "Mr. Garrison, what can I help you with?" He pulled a list from his pocket. "Quite a bit, I'm afraid. I'm starting from nothing. The ranch house has been empty for months." Maeve took the list, scanning it. Basic supplies, mostly. Food staples, lamp oil, soap, a few tools. "We have all of this. It will take me a few minutes to gather everything. I am in no hurry." As she moved around the store, pulling items from shelves and measuring out flour and sugar from the barrels, she felt his eyes following her. Not in the way some men looked at her, like she was something to be taken. This was different, curious, almost cautious. "You have been in Florissant long?" he asked. "All my life. My father had a claim up in the hills. He died 2 years ago." "I'm sorry." She shrugged, wrapping brown paper around a block of cheese. He was not a particularly good father. Loved his whiskey more than his daughter. But he was all I had. She was not sure why she said that. She did not talk about her father with anyone, but something about Kade's steady presence made the words slip out. "Family is complicated," he said quietly. "I understand that." She glanced at him, curious, but his expression had shuddered. She added the cheese to the growing pile on the counter. "Do you have family, Mr. Garrison?" "A brother. We do not speak." The pain in those few words was unmistakable. Maeve felt an unexpected kinship. She finished gathering his supplies and tallied the cost. It came to more than most cowboys would carry, but he counted out the money without hesitation. "Do you need help carrying this?" "I have a horse outside. I can manage, but I appreciate the offer." He began loading items into his arms, then paused. "Miss Fletcher, I wonder if I might ask you something." "Of course. Is there a church in town? Or a community gathering of any kind?" The question surprised her. "There is a church. Pastor Williams holds services on Sundays. And there is usually a town social once a month, though it is nothing fancy." "Thank you. I will keep that in mind." He touched his hat brim again. "Good day, Miss Fletcher. I am sure I will see you again soon." After he left, Mr. Henderson chuckled. "He was asking about you." He was asking about the church. Same thing. A man does not ask about church unless he is planning to attend, and a man does not plan to attend unless he wants to see someone proper-like. Henderson grinned. "Mark my words, girl, that one is interested." Maeve rolled her eyes and went back to her work, but her cheeks were warm. She told herself it meant nothing. Men often showed passing interest. It never lasted. She had no reason to think Kade Garrison would be any different. Sunday arrived with clear skies and the scent of pine on the mountain breeze. Maeve put on her best dress, a simple blue cotton that she had remade from one of her mother's old gowns. It was faded and out of fashion, but it was clean and fit her well enough. She walked the half-mile to the small wooden church, arriving as the bell was ringing, and there, standing near the entrance looking slightly uncomfortable, was Kade Garrison. He saw her immediately, and his expression transformed. Relief, she thought, as if he had been hoping she would come. He walked over, hat in hand. "Miss Fletcher, good morning." "Mr. Garrison, I did not expect to see you here so soon. I am a man of my word. When I say I will do something, I do it." He hesitated, then offered his arm. "May I?" She stared at his arm for a moment, startled. No man had offered to escort her into church since her father died. She glanced around, aware of the curious stares from the other townspeople. Then she placed her hand lightly on his arm. "Thank you." They walked in together, and she felt the weight of every eye in the room. Kade seemed oblivious, guiding her to a pew halfway up the aisle. He waited for her to sit, then took the seat beside her, leaving a respectable distance between them. The service passed in a blur. Maeve tried to focus on Pastor Williams's sermon about patience and faith, but she was acutely aware of the man beside her. He sang the hymns in a surprisingly good baritone. He bowed his head during prayers. When the collection plate came around, he contributed generously. Afterward, as people milled about outside in the sunshine, several townspeople came over to introduce themselves. Kade was polite to everyone, but he kept returning to Maeve's side, as if anchoring himself there. Mrs. Donnelly, the banker's wife, and the closest thing Florissant had to a society matron, fixed Maeve with a knowing look. "Well, Miss Fletcher, it seems you have made a new friend." "Mr. Garrison is new to town. I was simply showing him hospitality." "How Christian of you!" Mrs. Donnelly's smile was sharp. "Though, I wonder if young Mr. Garrison realizes what he is getting himself into, associating with you." The comment was meant to sting, and it did. Maeve had never been accepted by the so-called respectable women of Florissant. Her father's reputation as a drunk had tainted her by association, and the fact that she lived alone and worked for a living made her suspect in their eyes. Before Maeve could respond, Kade stepped closer. "I consider myself fortunate to have Miss Fletcher's acquaintance. She has been nothing but kind since I arrived." Mrs. Donnelly's eyes widened slightly. She had not expected him to speak up. "Of course, I meant no offense." "Then none is taken." His tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Mrs. Donnelly made her excuses and hurried away. Maeve looked up at him. "You did not need to do that." "Yes, I did. That woman was rude." He frowned after Mrs. Donnelly's retreating form. "Does that happen often?" "Often enough. My father was not well liked, and I am not married. That makes me either pitiable or scandalous, depending on who you ask." "It makes you neither. It makes you independent and strong." He said it matter-of-factly, as if it were obvious. "I admire that." Something warm unfurled in Maeve's chest. She looked away, unsure how to respond. "I should be getting home. May I walk you?" "You do not need to." "I know. May I anyway?" She found herself nodding. They walked through town slowly, and Kade told her about his first week at the ranch. The place had been even more run down than he expected, with fences needing repair and half the herd scattered across the mountains. But he spoke with enthusiasm about the work ahead, the plans he had to get the operation running smoothly again. "Mr. Patterson is too old to manage it himself anymore," Kade explained. "But he loves that ranch. It breaks his heart to see it falling apart. I aim to fix that." "It sounds like a lot of work for one man." "I have hired 3 good hands. We will manage." He glanced at her. "And I suspect I will be making frequent trips to town for supplies." Convenient, that. There was something in his voice, a hint of flirtation perhaps, that made her pulse quicken. But she kept her tone light. "Very convenient for Mr. Henderson's business." Of course, strictly professional. But he was almost smiling, and so was she. They reached her cabin, and Kade studied it with a critical eye. The roof needed patching, and the front step was starting to rot. Maeve saw him notice these things, and embarrassment heated her cheeks. "It is not much, but it is mine." "It is a good cabin, solid bones. A little work would fix it up nicely." He met her eyes. "If you ever need help with repairs, I am handy with tools." "I could not ask you to do that." "You did not ask. I offered." He touched his hat. "Thank you for allowing me to walk you home, Miss Fletcher. I hope I will see you again soon. I work at the store Tuesday through Saturday." "Then I will have to find reasons to visit the store." This time he did smile, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his whole face and made him devastatingly handsome. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Maeve standing on her creaking porch, her heart doing strange things in her chest. Over the next 2 weeks, Kade Garrison found many reasons to visit the store. He needed nails, then rope, then a new hatchet, because his had broken. Each visit he lingered at the counter, talking with Maeve about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in Wyoming, about learning to work cattle from his father. She told him about her mother, who had died when Maeve was 12, and how she had learned to keep house and manage money out of necessity when her father proved incapable of either. He never pushed, never pressed for more than she was willing to give. He simply listened. Those blue eyes focused on her, like she was the most important person in the world. On the third Sunday, he walked her home from church again. This time, when they reached her cabin, he pointed to the sagging step. "That is going to break soon. Someone could get hurt. I know. I have been meaning to fix it. I have time today. Let me do it. Mr. Garrison, I cannot ask you to spend your Sunday doing my repairs. Kade, please call me Kade, and you are not asking. I am offering again." He was already kneeling, examining the step. "The board is rotten. Do you have any spare lumber? There might be some behind the cabin. My father had a small pile." "Perfect. I will need a hammer and nails. Should take me less than an hour." Maeve wanted to protest, but the truth was she did need the help. Pride was one thing, but a broken leg from a collapsing step was quite another. "Let me at least make you some coffee while you work." "That sounds wonderful." She went inside and put the kettle on, then stood at the window watching him work. He had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms. He worked with the easy competence of someone who had done physical labor his whole life, measuring and cutting and hammering with steady precision. By the time the coffee was ready, he had replaced the rotten board and reinforced the step with cross-bracing. Maeve brought 2 cups outside, and they sat on the newly repaired step together. "Thank you," she said. "You did not have to do that." "I wanted to." He sipped his coffee, gazing out at the mountains. "I like helping you." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He looked at her, surprised. "Why do I like helping you?" "Why me? You could have your pick of women in this town. Half the unmarried girls have been making eyes at you since you arrived, but you keep coming around here, fixing my step, walking me home. Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "When I came to Florissant, I was not looking for anything except work. My last few years have been difficult. My brother and I had a falling out over the family ranch. He wanted to sell it after our father died. I wanted to keep it. We could not agree, and in the end, he bought out my share and told me to leave. I have been drifting since then, working different ranches, never staying long." He turned to look at her. "But when I saw you behind that water trough, covered in mud and scared but still looking out to see what was happening, something shifted. And then, when I talked to you, I realized you were strong and honest and you did not play games. I am tired of games, Maeve. I am tired of pretending and putting on faces for people. With you, I can just be myself." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. "I am not anything special. You are to me." The words hung in the air between them. Maeve did not know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe him, to trust that he meant it. But another part, the part that had been hurt before, was wary. "I should go," he said, standing. "I have an early morning tomorrow, but I want to see you again. May I come by next Sunday, after church? To fix more things? If you need things fixed, then yes, or just to talk, whichever you prefer." She stood as well, looking up at him. He was so tall and solid and steady. Everything her father had not been. Everything Thomas and all the other disappointing men had not been. "I would like that." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Good. Then I will see you on Sunday." He left, and Maeve went inside, sinking into her one good chair. Her hands were trembling. She felt off balance, like the world had shifted slightly and she was still finding her footing. She had been courted before, if you could call it that. Thomas had brought her flowers once, stolen from someone's garden. The merchant had taken her to dinner at the hotel. But it had always felt transactional somehow, like they were following a script to get to an expected end. This felt different. Kade was not trying to win her over with grand gestures or pretty words. He was just showing up consistently and being himself, offering help because he wanted to, not because he expected something in return, listening to her like he genuinely cared what she had to say. It terrified her, because if she let herself believe in it, if she let herself trust him, and then he left or changed or turned out to be like all the others, she did not think she could survive it. But despite her fear, she found herself looking forward to Sunday with an anticipation that made her stomach flutter every time she thought about it. The week passed slowly. Kade came into the store twice, once for legitimate supplies and once, Maeve suspected, just to see her. Each visit, he asked about her week, told her stories about the ranch, and left her with that smile that made her knees weak. On Saturday evening, as Maeve was closing up the store, Mrs. Donnelly came in with her daughter, Clara, a pretty blonde girl of 19, who had been making her interest in Kade very obvious. They browsed for a few minutes while Maeve waited, impatient to lock up and go home. "Miss Fletcher," Mrs. Donnelly said, as she brought her purchases to the counter, "I feel I should warn you about something." "Warn me?" "About Mr. Garrison. Clara spoke with him after church last Sunday, and he was very charming, very friendly. I would hate for you to get the wrong idea about his attentions." Clara giggled behind her hand. Maeve felt heat creep up her neck. "I am not sure what you mean. Only that a man like him, young and handsome and with good prospects, well, he is likely just being kind to you, out of Christian charity. But when it comes time to settle down, he will want someone younger, someone without your father's reputation hanging over her." Mrs. Donnelly's smile was syrupy sweet. "I just would not want you to be hurt when he moves on." The words struck like a slap, because they echoed Maeve's own fears, the doubts that kept her awake at night. She forced her expression to remain neutral as she wrapped Mrs. Donnelly's purchases. "I appreciate your concern, but it is unnecessary. Mr. Garrison and I are merely acquaintances." "Of course, dear, that is wise." After they left, Maeve locked the door and slumped against the counter. The joy she had felt all week had curdled into something bitter. Mrs. Donnelly was right, was she not? Kade could have his pick of women. Why would he choose her? But Sunday came anyway, and after church, Kade was waiting. Clara tried to intercept him, but he politely excused himself and came directly to Maeve. "Are you ready?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked in silence for a while. Kade kept glancing at her, his expression concerned. "Is something wrong?" "No." "Maeve, talk to me." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "This. Walking me home, fixing my step, spending time with me. What do you want?" He looked taken aback. "I want to get to know you." "Why?" "Mrs. Donnelly is right. You could court Clara or any of a dozen other girls. Why waste your time with me?" Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked like anger. "Did she say something to you?" "It does not matter what she said. It matters that she is right. I am 23, Kade. I live alone in a falling-down cabin. My father was the town drunk. I have no prospects, no dowry, nothing to offer. So why?" He stepped closer, his jaw tight. "Do you want to know why? Because those other girls see me as a prize to be won. They smile and flutter their eyelashes and say whatever they think I want to hear. But you are honest. You tell me what you really think. You do not pretend to be something you are not. And you are strong, Maeve. You have survived things that would have broken most people. That is not nothing. That is everything. You barely know me. Then let me know you better. That is what courtship is it not? Getting to know someone?" He took a breath, visibly calming himself. "I am sorry. I did not mean to raise my voice, but I need you to understand something. I am not here out of charity. I am not playing games. I am here because when I am with you, I feel like I have finally found something I did not even know I was looking for." Tears pricked Maeve's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "I am scared. Of me? Of believing you, of trusting this. Every time I have done that before, it has ended badly. I cannot promise I am perfect. I am not. I am stubborn and I work too hard, and I do not always know the right thing to say. But I can promise you this. I will never lie to you. I will never make you promises I cannot keep. And I will never treat you like you are anything less than deserving of respect and care." He held out his hand, palm up. "Give me a chance, Maeve. A real chance. Let me court you properly. Not like those other men did, whatever that was. But the right way. The way you deserve." She looked at his hand, then at his face. Those blue eyes were steady and honest. She thought about the past 2 weeks, how he had shown up consistently, how he had listened, how he had never pushed for more than she was ready to give. Maybe Mrs. Donnelly was wrong. Maybe, just maybe, this could be real. She placed her hand in his. "All right. But if you hurt me, Kade Garrison, I will never forgive you." If I hurt you, I will never forgive myself." He squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for trusting me." They walked the rest of the way to her cabin, hand in hand, and when they arrived, Kade surveyed the property with a critical eye. "Your roof needs patching. I know, it leaks when it rains. I can fix that next Sunday, and that fence in the back is falling down. Might as well repair that too. Kade, you cannot spend every Sunday doing my repairs." "Why not, unless you have a better idea for how we should spend our time?" She thought about it. "I could make us lunch, after you are done working, I mean, if you want." "I would like that very much." So began a pattern. Every Sunday, Kade would come after church and spend the afternoon working on Maeve's cabin. He patched the roof, replaced broken fence boards, fixed the loose shutter on the front window, reinforced the door frame, and afterward, they would eat the lunch Maeve prepared and talk for hours. She learned that he loved horses more than cattle, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from being thrown from a bronco when he was 16, that he had taught himself to read by studying his mother's Bible. He learned that she had wanted to be a teacher before her father's drinking ruined any chance of that she loved thunderstorms, that she had never been more than 50 miles from Florissant in her entire life. During the week, he came to the store at least twice, always with some excuse for supplies he needed. Mr. Henderson started teasing Maeve about it, but good-naturedly. He seemed to approve of Kade, and his approval meant something to Maeve. 6 weeks after that first Sunday, the town held its monthly social. It was a simple affair, held in the church hall, with music provided by old Pete on his fiddle and his grandson on guitar. There was dancing and food, and half the town turned out. Maeve had not planned to go. She usually avoided these events, tired of the disapproving looks and whispered comments. But Kade asked her specifically, showing up at her cabin on Saturday evening with his hat in his hands and an almost nervous expression. "Will you come to the social with me tomorrow night?" "I do not usually go to those." "I know, Mrs. Henderson mentioned it, but I would really like you to come, with me, as my guest. People will talk. Let them talk. I am not ashamed to be seen with you, Maeve. I am proud of it." He hesitated. "Unless you do not want to be seen with me?" "That is not it at all." "Then come. Please, I promise it will be fun." She could not resist when he looked at her like that. Hope and uncertainty mixed together in his expression. "All right, I will come." His face lit up. "Thank you. I will pick you up at 7. He arrived exactly on time, driving a small wagon borrowed from the ranch. He had cleaned up, wearing a crisp white shirt and a string tie, his hair neatly combed. He looked so handsome that Maeve felt suddenly self-conscious in her remade blue dress. But when he helped her into the wagon, he said, "You look beautiful," with such sincerity that she believed him. The church hall was crowded and warm, full of music and laughter. As they entered, conversation dipped noticeably. Everyone turned to look. Kade seemed oblivious, keeping his hand on the small of Maeve's back as he guided her inside. Clara Donnelly was there with a young miner, but her eyes fixed on Kade with obvious disappointment. Mrs. Donnelly's expression was pinched with disapproval, but there were friendly faces too. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson came over immediately, welcoming them both. Pastor Williams stopped by to chat, treating Maeve with the same kindness he showed everyone. When the dancing started, Kade led Maeve onto the floor without hesitation. She had not danced in years, but he was patient, guiding her through the steps until she found the rhythm. They danced 3 songs in a row until Maeve was breathless and laughing. "I am out of practice," she gasped. "You are perfect." He spun her one more time as the song ended, then led her outside, where the air was cooler. They stood on the steps, catching their breath, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said quietly. "I know it was not easy for you." "It was not as bad as I thought it would be. Most people were kind. And the ones who were not kind do not matter." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Maeve, I need to tell you something." Her heart jumped. "What?" "I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and wonderful and terrifying. Maeve stared at him, speechless. "I know it has only been 6 weeks," he continued. "I know that's not very long, but I have never felt like this before. When I am with you, everything makes sense. When I am not with you, I am thinking about when I will see you again. You are the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I sleep." He reached out and took her hand. "I am not asking you to say it back. I am just asking you to know that this is real for me. You are real for me." Tears were streaming down Maeve's face now, and she did not care. No one has ever said anything like that to me before. Then everyone before me was a fool. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know." But she found herself speaking anyway, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I am falling in love with you too. I did not want to. I tried not to. But I am." The joy that transformed his face was almost too much to bear. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and she buried her face against his chest and let herself feel it, all of it, the fear and the hope and the overwhelming emotion of finally being seen by someone who truly cared. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms while the music played inside and the stars wheeled overhead. When they finally pulled apart, Kade cupped her face in his hands. "May I kiss you?" She nodded, unable to speak. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But she did not want to. When his lips touched hers, gentle and sweet, she felt something inside her settle into place, like a key turning in a lock she had not known existed. It was not her first kiss, but it was the first one that mattered, the first one that felt like a promise instead of a lie. When they pulled apart, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right, Maeve. I want to court you properly, the way you deserve. I want to take my time and make sure you are certain about me, about us. And when you are ready, when you are absolutely sure, I am going to ask you to marry me." "You are?" "Yes, but not tonight. Not until you have no doubts." He kissed her forehead gently. "I can be patient when it matters." They went back inside, and for the rest of the evening, Maeve felt like she was floating. She did not care about the disapproving looks from Mrs. Donnelly or the whispers she saw behind raised hands. She had Cade's hand in hers, and that was all that mattered. As spring turned to summer, Kade was true to his word. He courted her with a patience and thoroughness that took her breath away. He brought her small gifts, nothing expensive but always thoughtful. A book he thought she would enjoy from his own collection, wildflowers picked from the mountain meadows, a new doorknob to replace her broken one. He took her on picnics in the hills, showing her hidden valleys and clear streams where they could talk for hours without interruption. He introduced her to Mr. Patterson, the owner of the Cripple Creek Ranch, a kindly old man who clearly respected Kade and welcomed Maeve warmly. Patterson's approval seemed to shift something in the town's perception. If the ranch owner accepted Maeve, then perhaps she was more respectable than they had thought. Kade met her at church every Sunday without fail, sitting beside her through services and walking her home afterward. He helped her plant a vegetable garden behind her cabin, building raised beds and showing her the best way to tend the plants. He repaired the inside of her cabin too, fixing the broken window latch and replacing the stove's damaged grate. "You are rebuilding my entire house," she said one afternoon, watching him work on rehanging a cupboard door. "Making it safer for you. That is different." He tested the door's swing, satisfied. "Besides, I like working with my hands. It relaxes me." "You work all week at the ranch. Sunday is supposed to be your day of rest." "This is rest. Being with you is the most relaxed I ever feel." He cleaned his tools and put them away, then came to sit beside her at the small table. "How was your week?" She told him about the customers at the store, the gossip she had overheard, the way Mrs. Donnelly had come in and actually been civil to her for once. He listened with full attention, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts. This was what she loved most, these quiet moments of domestic peace. The big romantic gestures were wonderful, but it was this steady, daily kindness that had truly won her heart. The way he remembered small details about her life, the way he asked her opinion on things and actually listened to her answers, the way he never made her feel less than for being poor or fatherless or any of the other things society said should diminish her. One Sunday in late June, he arrived with a package wrapped in brown paper. "What is this?" "Open it and see." She untied the string carefully and folded back the paper to reveal a dress. Not just any dress, but a beautiful one, made of green cotton with delicate white embroidery at the collar and cuffs. It was clearly new and must have cost more than Maeve spent on food in a month. "Kade, I cannot accept this." "Why not?" "It is too much, too expensive. I wanted to buy you something nice. You are always wearing that blue dress, and while you look lovely in it, I thought you might like something new." He looked worried. "Do you not like it? I can take it back." "I love it. It is the most beautiful dress I have ever seen. But Kade, this is not proper. A man should not be buying clothes for a woman he is not engaged to." "Then let me fix that." He stood abruptly, then knelt beside her chair, taking her hand. "Maeve Fletcher, will you marry me?" She stared at him in shock. "What?" "I said I would wait until you were sure, but I have been thinking about it, and I am tired of waiting. I love you. I want to spend my life with you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life together, have children together, grow old together." He squeezed her hand. "I know I am not perfect, I work too much, and I am not always good with words, but I promise I will do everything in my power to make you happy. So, will you marry me?" Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely think. This was what she had been afraid of, what she had been hoping for. "I do not have a dowry. I have nothing to bring to a marriage except myself and a half-broken cabin. I do not care about any of that. I want you, Maeve. Just you. People will say you are making a mistake, that you could do better. People can say whatever they want. I know what I want, and I want you." His eyes were intense, pinning her in place. "But you have not answered my question. Will you marry me?" She thought about the past 3 months, how he had shown up consistently, never wavering, never giving her reason to doubt him, how he had listened to her and respected her, and made her feel valued in a way she had never experienced before, how he had courted her properly, taking his time, making sure she knew he was serious. She thought about Thomas, who had disappeared after 2 weeks, about the merchant with his hidden wife, about all the men who had seen her as disposable, forgettable, and then she thought about Kade, steady and patient and true. "Yes," she whispered, "yes, I will marry you." The joy on his face was incandescent. He stood, pulling her to her feet, and kissed her with a fervor that made her dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he laughed. "I did not have a ring. I should have waited until I had a ring. I do not need a ring. You are getting one anyway, the best one I can afford." He kissed her again, quick and happy. "When? How soon can we do this?" "I do not know. I have never planned a wedding before." "Neither have I. We will figure it out together." He pulled her close, holding her tight. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being worthy of trust." They announced their engagement at church the following Sunday. The news spread through Florissant like wildfire. Reactions were mixed. The Hendersons were delighted, throwing them a small celebration dinner at their home. Pastor Williams was pleased, offering to perform the ceremony whenever they were ready. Mr. Patterson came to town specifically to congratulate them and tell Maeve she was getting a good man. But there were sour notes too. Mrs. Donnelly made pointed comments about rushed engagements and fortune hunters. A few of the men at the saloon joked loudly about Kade settling for damaged goods. Clara Donnelly cried in the general store, though she tried to hide it. Maeve tried not to let the negative reactions bother her, but they stung. She was used to disapproval, but somehow it hurt more now that she had something precious to protect. Kade, however, was unbothered. "They do not matter," he said firmly when she mentioned it. "We know the truth. That is all that counts." They set the wedding for August 15th, giving them 6 weeks to prepare. It would be a simple ceremony, just family and close friends. Maeve had no family left, but Kade surprised her by sending a letter to his brother. "I do not know if he will come," Kade admitted. "We have not spoken in almost 3 years, but he is my only family, and I want him to know I'm getting married, even if he chooses not to be there. What if he does come? Will it be awkward? Probably, but you will be there, so it will be all right." She loved him for that confidence, for the way he always made her feel like she was enough to handle anything. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Maeve worked during the days at the store, giving notice that she would be leaving after the wedding. Mr. Henderson was sorry to lose her, but understood. In the evenings and on Sundays, she and Kade made plans. They would live at the ranch in the foreman's house, a small but comfortable cabin, about a quarter-mile from the main ranch house. Mr. Patterson had given Kade permission to expand it if needed, and Kade was already drawing plans for an additional bedroom. "For children," he explained, showing her the sketches. "Assuming you want them?" "I do, lots of them if we are blessed." She studied the plans. "This is a good design." I want to build something that will last, something we can pass down to our children someday. He set down the pencil and pulled her onto his lap. I want to build a life with you, Maeve. A real, lasting life. You already are, she said, kissing him softly. 2 weeks before the wedding, a stranger arrived in Florissant asking for directions to the Cripple Creek Ranch. He was tall like Kade, with the same strong jaw, but his eyes were gray instead of blue and his hair was lighter. When Maeve saw him ride past the store, her heart sank. This had to be Kade's brother. That evening, Kade came to her cabin looking exhausted. Kyle is here. Your brother? I thought I saw him ride by today. He came to the ranch. Mr. Patterson told him where to find me. Kade sank into a chair, rubbing his face. We talked, or tried to. It is complicated. Do you want to tell me about it? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak, slowly at first, then faster as the words poured out. He told her about his father, a hard man who had built the ranch from nothing and expected his sons to be equally strong. About his mother, who had died when Kade was 12 and Kyle was 10, leaving them with only their father's harsh discipline. About how Kade had loved the ranch, had poured his heart into it, while Kyle had always wanted to leave, to see the world beyond Wyoming. When Pa died, Kyle wanted to sell immediately. He said the ranch was a prison, that Pa had used it to control us our whole lives. I said it was our heritage, the one good thing Pa left us. We fought for weeks. Finally, Kyle said he would buy my half if I wanted to keep it so badly. But he quoted me half of what it was actually worth. Kade's voice was bitter. When I pointed that out, he said it was fair because he was doing me a favor, that if we sold to someone else, I would get nothing because Pa had left the ranch to both of us together, not divided. So I either took his offer or got nothing. That is terrible. I took it. What choice did I have? And then he turned around and sold the whole ranch 3 months later for twice what he paid me. He kept all the profit. Kade's hands clenched into fists. I was so angry. We had a huge fight. I told him I never wanted to see him again. He said good riddance, and that was 3 years ago. But he came to your wedding. He said he came because he felt guilty, that he has been carrying it around all this time, and when he got my letter, he realized he needed to make things right. Kade looked up at her. He offered to give me the money he owes me, the full amount with interest. Maeve sat down across from him. What did you say? I told him I do not want his money, that it is too late for that. He reached across the table and took her hand. But then I thought about you, about us, about the life we are trying to build, and I realized that maybe I am being too stubborn. That money could buy us a lot of things. We could expand the house properly, buy some cattle of our own to start building our own herd, have a real cushion for emergencies. But I am still so angry with him. I do not know if I can just forgive him because he showed up with money. Maeve squeezed his hand. You do not have to decide tonight. He came to the wedding, right? So you have 2 weeks to figure out how you feel. Talk to him. Really talk to him. Not just about the ranch, but about everything. Maybe there is more to the story than you know. You are probably right. You usually are. He managed a tired smile. Will you meet him tomorrow? If you want me to. I do. You are going to be family. I want you two to at least know each other. The next evening, Kyle came to Maeve's cabin. He was polite and well-spoken, but there was a tension in his shoulders that suggested he was uncomfortable. The three of them sat at Maeve's small table drinking coffee, and the conversation was stilted at first. But as the evening wore on, things eased slightly. Kyle told stories about growing up with Kade, funny incidents that made Kade laugh despite himself. He asked Maeve about herself, listening with what seemed like genuine interest. And when the subject of the ranch came up again, Kyle did not make excuses. I was wrong, he said bluntly. I was angry at Pa, and I took it out on you. The ranch represented everything I hated about growing up, and I wanted to be rid of it. I did not think about what it meant to you. Or, I did not care. I was selfish. He met Kade's eyes. I am sorry, truly. I know that does not fix anything, but I needed to say it. Kade was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Thank you for saying that. It does not erase what happened, but it helps to hear it. I do not expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever, but I want to try to make things right between us, if you will let me. I want that too, Kade admitted. I have missed having a brother. I have missed having one as well. Maeve watched the two of them, seeing the resemblance not just in their features, but in their stubbornness, their pride. Both of them had been hurt, and both had hurt each other in return. But there was love there too, buried under the anger and pain. Maybe, with time, they could rebuild what had been broken. Over the next 2 weeks, Kyle stayed in Florissant, taking a room at the boarding house. He and Kade spent time together, talking through their shared past, airing grievances and misunderstandings. It was not always easy. There were arguments and tense silences. But slowly they began to find their way back to each other. Kyle also spent time getting to know Maeve, and she found herself liking him despite his past actions. He was different from Kade, more outgoing and charming, but underneath was the same fundamental decency. He clearly loved his brother and genuinely regretted what he had done. 3 days before the wedding, Kyle took them both to dinner at the hotel and presented Kade with a bank draft. "This is the full amount I owe you, plus 3 years of interest calculated at the going rate. It is yours, no strings attached. You can use it however you want or tear it up right now, if that is what you prefer. But either way, I want you to know that I am not trying to buy your forgiveness. I am just trying to make amends." Kade stared at the draft for a long time. Then he looked at Maeve. "What do you think?" "I think it is your decision, but I also think that holding on to anger hurts you more than it hurts him. If accepting this helps you let go and move forward, then take it. If it does not, then do not." Kade took a deep breath and pocketed the draft. "Thank you, Kyle. This means a lot to our future." Kyle's relief was palpable. "You are welcome, and congratulations. Maeve is a wonderful woman. You are lucky to have her." "I know." Kade reached over and took Maeve's hand. "Believe me, I know." The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with the kind of perfect mountain weather that felt like a blessing. Maeve woke in her cabin for the last time, butterflies dancing in her stomach. Mrs. Henderson arrived early to help her dress in the green gown Kade had given her, which Maeve had decided to wear for the ceremony. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Henderson said, pinning up Maeve's dark hair. "I am so happy for you. Kade is a good man." "I know. I am very lucky." "He is lucky too. You have a good heart, Maeve. You will make him a wonderful wife." There was a knock at the door, and Kyle called out, "Are you decent? Kade sent me to escort you to the church." Mrs. Henderson opened the door, and Kyle stepped in, stopping short when he saw Maeve. "Wow, my brother is a fortunate man." "Thank you." Maeve picked up the small bouquet of wildflowers she had gathered yesterday. "Is he nervous?" "Terrified, but happy. He has been smiling like a fool all morning." They walked to the church together, Kyle offering his arm. Inside, the small building was full. It seemed like half of Florissant had turned out, some out of genuine affection, others out of curiosity. Maeve saw Mrs. Donnelly in the back, her expression sour, but she also saw Mr. Henderson beaming and Pastor Williams waiting at the front with a warm smile. And there was Kade, standing at the altar in his best suit, his eyes fixed on the door. When he saw her, his whole face lit up with such joy that Maeve felt her own worries melt away. Nothing else mattered. Not the gossiping townspeople, or the disapproving looks, or the doubts that sometimes still whispered in the back of her mind. All that mattered was this man, who had courted her with such patience and care, who had shown her what it meant to be truly valued. Kyle walked her down the aisle and placed her hand in Kade's, then stepped back to stand as his brother's best man. Kade squeezed her fingers gently, and Maeve squeezed back. Pastor Williams began the ceremony, his words washing over Maeve in a blur. She heard herself making vows, promising to love and honor and cherish. She heard Kade making the same promises, his voice steady and sure. And then Kyle was handing over a ring, a simple gold band, and Kade was sliding it onto her finger. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Kade pulled her close and kissed her, gentle but thorough, and the church erupted in applause. When they pulled apart, Maeve was laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed with happiness. They walked back down the aisle together as husband and wife, into the sunshine, where people crowded around to congratulate them. The afternoon passed in a joyful blur. There was a celebration in the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Kade hardly left the Maeve's side, keeping her close as they accepted well wishes from friends and acquaintances. Even Mrs. Donnelly approached, though her congratulations were stiff. "I hope you will be very happy, Mrs. Garrison." Mrs. Garrison. Maeve felt a thrill at the name. She was no longer Maeve Fletcher, the daughter of the town drunk. She was Maeve Garrison, wife of a respected rancher, and the world felt full of possibility. As the sun began to set, Kade whispered in her ear, "Are you ready to go home?" Yes. She had never been more ready for anything in her life. They said their goodbyes and climbed into the wagon for the ride out to the ranch. Kade had already moved Maeve's few belongings to their cabin earlier in the week. As they drove through the gathering twilight, Maeve looked at the mountains rising dark against the sky, at the stars beginning to emerge, and felt a sense of rightness settle over her. "Are you happy?" Kade asked. "So happy. Are you?" "Happier than I have ever been." He reached over and took her hand. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for asking properly, for doing everything properly, for showing me what it is supposed to feel like." They arrived at the cabin as full darkness fell. Kade helped her down from the wagon and then swept her into his arms, carrying her across the threshold. She laughed, clutching his shoulders. "I did not know you were going to do that. It is tradition. I want to start our marriage right." He set her down gently and lit a lamp, filling the space with warm light. The cabin was small but cozy, and Kade had clearly spent time making it nice for her. There were fresh curtains on the windows, a new quilt on the bed, wildflowers in a jar on the table. It was not much, but it was theirs. Kade came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Is it all right? I know it is not fancy. It is perfect. You are perfect." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I love you, Kade Garrison." "I love you too, Maeve Garrison." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and she melted into him, letting herself feel everything she had been holding back, the want and need and trust. This was her husband, her partner, the man who had spent months proving himself worthy, who had courted her properly when no one else ever had. That night, in their small cabin under the Colorado stars, they came together with a tenderness and passion that sealed their vows in the most intimate way. And afterward, lying wrapped in each other's arms, Maeve felt a peace she had never known before. "We are going to have a good life," Kade murmured against her hair. "I promise you that." "We already are," she whispered back, and it was true. The months that followed were the happiest of Maeve's life. She settled into her new role as Kade's wife and as part of the ranch community. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and hard work, the satisfaction of building something together. Kade was everything she had hoped for, and more. He never took her for granted, never treated her like a servant or possession the way she had seen some husbands treat their wives. Instead, he valued her opinions, asked for her input on decisions, and made sure she knew every day how much he loved her. With the money Kyle had returned, they were able to make real improvements. They expanded the cabin, adding 2 more rooms and a proper kitchen. They bought a small herd of their own cattle to start building their own operation separate from the ranch. They invested in better equipment and hired on another hand to help with the increased workload. Kyle visited twice that first year, and each time the relationship between the brothers grew stronger. By the second visit, they were joking and laughing like the rift had never happened. Maeve was glad. She knew how much it meant to Kade to have his brother back in his life. In the town, attitudes slowly shifted. As people saw how happy Maeve and Kade were together, the gossip died down. Mrs. Donnelly never warmed to Maeve, but she stopped making snide comments. Other women began to be friendlier, inviting Maeve to quilting circles and church committees. It helped that Kade was well-liked and respected. His reputation lent credibility to their marriage in a way that felt unfair but also undeniably helpful. The following spring, Maeve discovered she was pregnant. Kade was overjoyed, immediately becoming ridiculously protective. He tried to stop her from doing any heavy work, hovering until she laughingly shooed him away. "Women have babies while working ranches all the time," she reminded him. "I am not made of glass. You are carrying our child. I am allowed to worry. Worry all you want, but let me live my life. I will let you know if I need help." Their son was born in November 1879, a healthy baby with Kade's dark hair and Maeve's gray eyes. They named him William after Kade's father, though Kade admitted privately that he hoped to do a better job than his father had. "You will," Maeve assured him, watching him cradle the baby with awkward tenderness. "You already are." Fatherhood transformed Kade. He was still the steady, hard-working man she had married, but now there was a softness to him, a willingness to be vulnerable that had not been there before. He would spend hours holding William, talking to him in a low voice, telling him about the ranch and the mountains and all the things they would do together when he was older. Kyle came to visit when William was 3 months old, bringing an absurdly large rocking horse as a gift. "He cannot even sit up yet," Kade pointed out, laughing. "He will grow into it. I am planning ahead." Kyle held his nephew carefully, looking awed. "He is perfect. You two made a perfect baby." "We think so," Maeve agreed, watching her husband and his brother together. 2 years ago, they had been estranged. Now they were family again. It felt like a gift. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered under Kade's management. Mr. Patterson grew frailer with age, and more he turned over the operations to Kade, trusting his judgment completely. He told them privately that when he died, he planned to leave the ranch to Kade, having no children of his own. "You have made this place what it used to be," Patterson said. "You and your wife. You have earned it." When Patterson did pass away peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, his will confirmed what he had told them. The Cripple Creek Ranch belonged to Kade and Maeve now. It was an overwhelming responsibility, but also an incredible opportunity. They threw themselves into building the ranch into something even better. Maeve proved to have a head for business, managing the books and negotiating contracts with a shrewdness that impressed everyone. Together, they made the Cripple Creek Ranch one of the most successful operations in the region. Their daughter was born in 1882, a tiny thing with her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes. They named her Catherine, and she was as fierce as her brother was gentle. William adored his little sister, following her around and trying to keep her out of trouble as soon as she could crawl. More children followed. Another son, James, born in 1884. Twin girls, Anna and Elizabeth, born in 1886, and the terror of the household with their mischief and energy. The cabin they had expanded became too small, and they built a proper ranch house on a hill overlooking the valley. It was not a mansion, but it was comfortable and large enough for their growing family. Maeve planted a garden and filled the house with warmth and love. On their 10th anniversary, Kade took Maeve up to a spot in the mountains he had found years ago, a meadow filled with wildflowers and surrounded by aspens. They sat on a blanket watching the clouds drift over the peaks, their children safe at home, with Kyle, who was visiting again. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Maeve asked, leaning against Kade's shoulder. "Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days it feels like we have always been together." He kissed the top of her head. "I know I do not say it enough, but thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes, for trusting me when you had no reason to, for building this life with me, for giving me a family." His voice was rough with emotion. "I was drifting before I met you. Now I am anchored. You are my anchor, Maeve, and you are mine." She turned to look at him, touching his face. The years had been kind to him. There was silver at his temples now, lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. But he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. More importantly, he was still the best man she had ever known. "You changed my life, Kade. You showed me what love is supposed to look like, what partnership is supposed to feel like. Everything good in my life started the day you walked down that street toward the gunfire." "I was terrified that day," he admitted with a laugh. "I thought I was going to get shot, but then I saw you peeking around that water trough, and something just clicked inside me. I knew I had to make sure you were safe." "My hero." She kissed him softly. "Then and now and always." They stayed on the mountain until sunset, talking about their children, their plans for the ranch, their dreams for the future. When they finally rode back down, the house was glowing with lamplight, and they could hear the children's laughter floating out through the open windows. Life was not perfect. They had struggles and disagreements like any couple. There were lean years when the weather was bad or the cattle prices dropped. There were worries about the children when they got sick, sleepless nights and fears that gripped the heart. But through it all, they had each other. That foundation Kade had built during their courtship, that bedrock of respect and trust and genuine affection, held strong through every storm. As the years passed, the children grew. William became a skilled horseman and took over more of the ranch operations. Catherine surprised everyone by becoming interested in veterinary medicine, learning everything she could about treating sick animals. James had his mother's head for business. The twins were inseparable and together seemed capable of anything they set their minds to. Kade and Maeve watched their children flourish with pride and gratitude. They had built something lasting, not just in the ranch, but in their family. All of it traced back to that decision Maeve had made to trust, to say yes, to believe that this man was different from all the others. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Kyle was there with his wife and children. The house was full of noise and love and chaos, exactly as a home should be. Late in the evening, after the children had finally settled down, Maeve and Kade sat on the porch looking at the stars. She was 43 now, with silver threads in her dark hair. He was 45, his temples fully gray. They had weathered 2 decades together, raised 5 children, built a successful ranch from nothing. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Maeve asked. "If you had not come to Florissant that day, or if I had said no when you asked to court me?" "Sometimes, but not with regret. Only with gratitude that things worked out the way they did." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the gold band she still wore. "You are the best decision I ever made, Maeve. Courting you properly, taking the time to do things right, showing you that you were worth the effort. That was the smartest thing I have ever done. You were patient with me, even when I was difficult and scared and pushing you away. You were patient. You showed me what it meant to be courted properly, to be respected and valued. No one had ever done that before." She squeezed his hand. "You gave me everything, Kade. A home, a family, a life I never imagined I could have. I love you more now than I did the day we married." "Good, because I love you more too, and I will love you more tomorrow than today, and more the day after that than tomorrow. That is how this works, I think. Love that is real just keeps growing." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the night sounds of the ranch they had built together. Inside the house, their children slept safe and warm. Around them stretched thousands of acres of land they had turned into something prosperous and good. Maeve thought back to that terrified girl hiding behind a water trough, convinced that love was not for her, that she was too damaged or too poor or too something to deserve real happiness. She thought about all the men who had confirmed those fears with their carelessness and their lies. And then she thought about Kade, who had seen something in her worth cherishing, who had spent months proving himself, showing up day after day, fixing her broken step and her broken fences and, bit by bit, her broken heart. He had courted her properly. He had done everything right. And when she finally said yes, he had spent the rest of their lives proving that her trust had been well placed. "What are you thinking about?" Kade asked, noticing her smile. "How lucky I am. How blessed we are. How grateful I am that you were stubborn enough not to give up on me." "I would never have given up on you. You were worth waiting for, worth fighting for." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "You always will be." They sat like that as the night deepened, 2 people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful from that chance meeting. Their story was not one of instant passion or dramatic declarations. It was quieter than that, built on consistency and care, on showing up and following through, on choosing each other day after day. But it was no less powerful for being quiet. If anything, it was stronger, because love built slowly, with patience and intention, could weather any storm. As they finally stood to go inside, Kade paused to look at his wife in the moonlight. 20 years had not dimmed his love one bit. If anything, it had deepened it, added layers of respect and partnership, and shared history that young love could never have. "I will always be grateful you said yes," he told her. "I will always be grateful you asked," she replied, "and that you did it right." They walked inside together, hand in hand, closing the door on another day in the life they had built. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, as every day did. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything for the past 20 years. Because Kade had courted Maeve properly, with patience and respect and genuine care. He had shown her that she deserved to be valued, that love did not have to hurt or disappoint. And when she had finally trusted him enough to say yes, he had spent every day since proving that her faith in him was justified. Their love story was not about grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though it had started with one. It was about the 1,000 small kindnesses that followed, the repaired steps and patched roofs, the patient conversations and respectful courtship, the steady, unwavering presence that said, "I am here and I am not going anywhere." That was the kind of love that lasted, the kind that built families and homes and lives worth living, the kind that transformed a lonely woman and a drifting cowboy into partners, into parents, into two halves of one extraordinary whole. Years later, when their grandchildren asked how they had met, Maeve and Kade would tell them about the morning with the gunfire, about the months of courtship, about the patient way Kade had proven himself. They would talk about the importance of respect and trust, about building love slowly and carefully instead of rushing. And they would end by saying that love done right, love built on a foundation of genuine care and consistent action, was the strongest force in the world. It could heal old wounds and build new dreams. It could turn a broken-down cabin into a home, and a lonely heart into something joyful. That was their legacy, passed down through generations. Not just the ranch or the wealth they had built, but the understanding of what real love looked like. The knowledge that courtship mattered, that taking the time to do things properly was worth every moment, that saying yes to the right person could change everything. Maeve had never been courted properly before Kade, but he had spent months doing it right, showing her respect and care and genuine affection without expectations or demands. And when she finally said yes, he had made sure she never regretted it for even a single day. That was the story of Maeve and Kade Garrison, a love story set in the Wild West, but timeless in its message. Love was not about speed or drama. It was about patience and consistency and showing up day after day, proving through actions rather than words that you were worthy of trust. And when you found someone willing to do that for you, someone who saw your worth even when you could not see it yourself, someone who courted you properly with respect and care, then you held onto them with both hands and built a life worth living. That was exactly what Maeve and Kade had done. And as they grew old together, surrounded by children and grandchildren and the ranch they had built, they knew with absolute certainty that every moment of patience, every careful step of their courtship, every day of their marriage had been worth it. They had found real love, the kind that lasted. And it had started with a cowboy brave enough to walk toward danger, patient enough to court a wary woman properly, and devoted enough to spend the rest of his life proving her yes had been the right answer. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for. A love built on respect, sustained by consistency, and made beautiful by the simple act of choosing each other day after day for the rest of their lives.